Welcome to the Rebel's Edge. We've got Coinbase today, and we have some unusual options out there. And let me tell you something, crypto is on fire. Giddy up, baby. Well, welcome to today's Rebel's Edge. Mikey is joining us today, Mikey Yamamoto. Mikey Yamamoto does a great job with the unusual options at Market Rebellion, does an incredible job of digging these things out, working through the entire thing, and actually giving people the correct moves that they're expecting based upon what they're seeing in the unusual. Mikey, you and Chris are absolutely incredible at what you do. And we were talking earlier, you said something about pretty busy. Started off slow, and then it just started moving.
As always, when the market's kind of waffling around, especially if there's any red on the screen, which we're so unused to seeing these days, then everybody just kind of sits on their hands. But the minute things start to move higher, which it often does, right? Then everybody starts jumping into the water. And the more Jerome Powell doesn't say anything, the better it looks for people. So that seems to be the way it's going right now.
So let's hit that, Mikey. Let's hit the macro minute. I'm going to say that Jerome Powell is going to say as little as possible. Now, let's hope he can stick to that. I think that's the game plan going in. With these 50 hours, 60 hours, whatever it is, that they've got to have the Fed up there and Jerome Powell answering all the questions and giving some statements as well. Let's just hope he doesn't have to backpedal off of him, Mikey, because if he can just be out there talking about inflation, talking about it being sticky, they're going to be very much watching that very closely because they don't want to get too far in front of themselves with the cutting. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But can he stick to his word, Mike?
I don't know. We're saying that they should nail his shoes to the floor so he won't put his foot in his mouth, as he's done so many times. But, the other thing, Pete, even if he does say something that moves the markets one way or the other, remember what happened last time when they had to walk it back with a bunch of guys like Larry Gates. So, just depending on what happens after all this, it's not necessarily a done deal. That's just based on our last experience.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to those fantastic futures, and we're going to start off with
Fantastic Futures.
Crude oil, Mikey. Now we're pushing up against the year-to-date highs. It's only a couple months into the year, but nonetheless, up there towards 80. You look at nat gas, got all the way down to 152. Now here we're sitting just around that $2 level, so that's on the move as well. And then you've got gold, all-time, not just 52-week, all-time highs today, getting up and through that 2140 area. We are seeing a lot going on in that. But, Mikey, what are you seeing from the fantastic futures standpoint?
Well, all the same things you mentioned, Pete, but crude is the one in particular that I'm looking on because, as you point out, it's right up at that 80 level, and it seems to be kind of a magnet there right now. It doesn't look like it wants to go down ever since it went from, just a month ago when it was down almost $10. So now this is kind of do or die, I think, from a technical standpoint. I mean, Brian McCormick, of course, would be the one to look at to talk to specifically about the particulars, but it's right up there against resistance now. That's pretty important. So if it breaks through that, I think, then we're looking at like $10 moves or something like that. So.
And the interesting thing is we've seen a pickup in unusual option activity in materials, specifically in some of the gold products as well. So that'll be something to watch very closely. All right, Mikey, let's just jump right into it. CrowdStrike. This is cybersecurity. It's been on fire. It opened the day. Now, this is a stock that yesterday was down about 5%. Today, it was up as much as 25%. Now it's, last I looked, 12, 15%, something like that to the upside, but hitting all-time highs. That's pretty impressive. This is one of those names that just has been absolutely rocking. They beat on their earnings. They beat on their revenue. They guided with strength. Their revenue projections look unbelievable. They're talking about almost $4 billion in revenue. And with all that going on, they had an acquisition as well. So this is a stock that's absolutely ripped to the upside. What do you think about the stock right here after it's made this kind of a move?
I like it. I like what it's done, especially given after what Palo Alto Networks did the other day. The one thing about this, though, in space that's interesting is Palo Alto Networks is down another $7 today, even after it tried to rally back, I think, based on sympathy with CrowdStrike. So that's one thing I'm not so sure about. I don't know what that means for the space in general for the future, or if CrowdStrike is taking business away from Palo Alto Networks. I don't know. I haven't looked at those guys that closely lately. So I'm kind of on the fence a little bit about the whole thing, frankly.
Yeah, it's been an amazing run. Their earnings spiked up only 100% year over year, so that's not so bad. Seems like a pretty good number. How about Foot Locker, Mikey? I'm looking at this one, and this is just one of those names where you kind of just wonder, when are they going to get that mojo back? They've had some nice runs, they've had some pullbacks, they've got a decent sized short position here in the stock that actually was going in their face. Well, it's actually working the other way today. They're really starting to be pretty happy that they're short. It's down about 15% early on when we started off the day. Now the free cash flow, that's dropped. Their gross margins actually dropped. When you look at what the CEO had to say about the future, some of the guidance, that wasn't very impressive either. So I didn't see much of anything positive. Yes, they beat on earnings, but these are earnings that are obviously adjusted. And their revenue growth of 2%, I don't think that's enough. What do you think of this one, Mikey?
That space has just gotten harder and harder, right? I mean, ever since people just stopped going to malls, and then we had COVID and everything else. I know, Pete, you like to wear those referee shirts that they've probably given you there, that they wear their uniforms. I got to look at another stock that's we used to look at as related, which is Nike, and sometimes we'd even look at like paper in one or the other, usually in Foot Locker, as maybe a precursor to what Nike might do in earnings, that kind of thing. I kind of look at it the other way around these days, and now that Nike looked like it was starting to have some life to it about a month ago or so, and now it's kind of come back down and doesn't look great on the chart. So I think as Nike goes, so goes Foot Locker is kind of how I'm looking at it, which is not all that.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. How about this one, Mikey? Let's jump to Coinbase real quick. Now this 52-week highs, all-time highs, just absolutely ripping to the upside. We all know why. We've seen what's going on with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's made this unbelievable move since the 1st of February till now. And another all-time high for Bitcoin. And it's just been incredible. So this has been something where a lot of these names that we talk about that are very closely involved with Bitcoin or crypto have been moving along with it. Some of them have actually adjusted the opposite way now and not necessarily tracking it the way it was, except for Coinbase. If Bitcoin's going up, we seem to be a big catalyst for Coinbase to do the same thing. And when you look at what Coinbase has done, they buy, they sell, transfer, they store cryptocurrencies, all of that. It's pretty interesting, Mikey. And we had some unusual option activity. I can let you take it over if you want, but those April 200 calls, they bought a few of those things, 17,000 of them. And you can see it right up there on the screens. They were $29.35. Well, today they're trading a little over $47. So I'd say that's a pretty nice trade. That's why we follow this unusual option activity, because people seem to sniff this out. And by the way, that was February 28th. What do you think of Coinbase, Mikey? I mean, is it something that can stay along with the run with crypto, or are they going to fall off like some of these miners?
I don't think they will, Pete, because they're the big dog in the space, as you point out. It's like the other ones, like Riot and Mara. And Mara's done better. Riot, not so much, not quite as tracking as directly. But, Coinbase is BlackRock, right? And that means ETFs. And I think that's sort of reflected in their price. The one thing about the trade that you mentioned, couple things. One is that it's pretty much at the money, even a little bit in the money, the time that it was done on the 28th. And it's a roll, and it's a big one. And when we've seen those rolls, especially in the money rolls in big names, and not just in crypto, but everywhere, but especially in coin, those tend to work. Those tend to be, and we as we say, we follow the rolls, especially if they worked, because it means that somebody knows what they're doing, right? And they're still in the trade. So as you point out, at some point it doesn't work. But for now, geez, they've been doing this since it was about 140, 130, it looks like. I'm looking, maybe even 100, these big rolls. And then just going all the way up to 200 now. So I'd say that's a pretty good track record.
Yeah, nice trade and amazing what these guys have been able to do. And they bought a little bit of time, Mikey. How about this next one, the last one? We've got Nordstrom. Now, Nordstrom's had its ups, it's had its downs, and today, unfortunately, it's on the downside. And that's despite the fact that when you look at the earnings, people will say to us all the time, well, they beat on the earnings. They got 96 cents. They're looking for 89, 90 cents on the earnings side. They beat on the revenue as well, not by a lot, but they did beat the number that was expected out of them. Here's the problem: guidance. When you give guidance that doesn't even come close to where they were expecting, that's usually a signal to just start turning and selling, and the palms are out and everybody starts looking. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. There is a large short position in Nordstrom. Those shorts are pretty happy today. I will say that, Mikey. The margins did improve just a little bit, but not enough. I think that the problem for the Nordstroms of the world, and sometimes maybe the Macy's, although Macy's right now is under siege because they've got somebody who really actually wants to buy them, and that number keeps going higher and higher. So that's a little bit of a different story. But when you look at the numbers for Nordstrom, it does make you kind of a little bit nervous about what the future looks like right now.
Yeah, and I think that, but what you pointed out though, the possible of an M&A, possibility of a buyout, that's what would scare me out of being short in this name, especially after a day like this. I mean, it's just going to get more and more attractive. I think if their assets are deemed to be worthy, I frankly would like to buy this one better as an acquisition, P&E or private equity more than Macy's, to tell you the truth. The one thing about Nordstrom though is their real estate, I think, is more expensive. They tend to be kind of in the higher priced areas. And I don't know what that means, but they've closed in my area because they can't afford to keep up. So I don't know. All I'll tell you is the last time I went in there, you could shoot a cannon through the men's department, and which is tough because it keeps getting smaller. They've shrunk that damn thing to like a third of what it used to be. So which is fine with me because I'm here wearing Aloha shirts. So.
You and I are casual buyers. That's what we are.
in more ways than one, absolutely.
Well, it should be interesting. A few years ago, I remember that the Nordstrom family was looking to maybe possibly buy it back themselves, and we're working on that. So, it hits a certain level. Maybe that becomes some other factor going forward too. So we'll see how that plays out. We've got a fun sports clip. We've always got these great clips. John's great about sending these things out, but let's roll this one out, Jared. I think this should be pretty fun.
This guy right now has been my most valuable player in this Eagles offense.
He's one of the brothers.
When you have a center that can pull, cut off a linebacker, then get downfield and get another block.
Oh, that's Jason Kelsey right there.
Championship football right there. But this guy
that's why that guy's going to be a Hall of Famer, Mikey. He is a special guy, big, mean, angry, but fun and fun-loving. If anybody ever saw the clips of him after they won the Super Bowl and he's walking around in that crazy get-up that he had, and he had everybody, and, clearly there might have been a little bit of alcohol involved, but I think those guys, they might have had a pretty good time at their Super Bowl party after the win. So
he looked more like one of those guys that takes his shirt off with a big C painted on him or something.
Right.
Man, I didn't need to see that.
He's definitely not, he's not what we call shredded.
I don't think so. I think we know why Taylor went for his brother.
I think his brother definitely was a little bit more of an attraction for Taylor than him. But it's always, I'll tell you what, the guy, he will be a Hall of Famer. He played for a long time. He was a great center. And the one thing about the center position, because we're going to jump into football in 1 second, but the center position, if you've got a center who can actually do what he did on that play that was highlighted there, where he pulls.
Yeah.
Not too many centers pull, folks. You usually have a guard, maybe a guard and a tackle or whatever. But the center, he's got somebody right on him. So if he's got the athleticism to be able to pop him and run around and then hit somebody else, he's pretty special. And that guy is special. And they got a great podcast. They got a lot of fun. I mean, those Kelsey brothers, they got a good sense of humor, Mikey.
Yeah. Randy Cross. He's the only other center who could do it like that I recall.
San Francisco 49er, folks. That's because Mikey is a 49er through and through. Let me tell you that ahead of time. There you go. He's got the helmet right behind him.
Usually that's upside down, though, especially after they lose a Super Bowl. But anyway.
Well, and there's usually booze somewhere behind them. But anyway, so we're gonna jump to the Rebel Sports. So, Mikey, these franchise tags are all over the place, which they always are, and they're gonna be. And it's kind of interesting to see who's getting the franchise tag. Yeah. I saw my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was Antoine Winfield. He was tagged. He's going to be making I feel terrible because when you get the tag, they really take care of you in a bad way. No, they don't. $17 million he's going to get. I saw the wide receiver from Indy's getting almost $22 million for this 1 year when they do the tag. So when you look at that, you look at the other 4 guys that were there just the other day that got the tags, and they'll go through the process because free agency starts next week. Right. So what I wanted to ask you, Mikey, was when you look at the quarterbacks for free agency, where do you think, first of all, Kirk Cousins, that's an unusual thing to have a guy at that caliber being a free agent available to people, and including the Vikings. Maybe they re-sign him. I don't think so. But maybe. I mean, I think the money's too much for the Vikings given the fact they've got so many holes. So where do you think his landing spot and Ryan Tannehill? Because I know that Tannehill's not great. He had a good year or two at Tennessee, but he's always been kind of 50-50. But
he
he's
seems
got
headed for.
he's got some talent.
Yeah, he's not a Baker Mayfield though. I don't think he's headed for. I think he's sort of a second stringer at this point. A good one. For somebody who needs him. I mean, hell, maybe in San Francisco if they didn't have like a darn kind of thing. I mean, I think you're right about Cousins. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, he was already shaky to begin with, so not putting the tag on him. I'll tell you one thing though, Pete. The thing that gets me about these franchise tags is how about the guys who didn't get one?
Yeah.
I mean, Saquon Barkley. I mean, Jacobs and stuff like. I mean, it's like again, here we go again. Doesn't anybody care about running backs? It's just it seems like it's like all the all the ones who should be getting it aren't getting it. So I don't know. It's like I don't know what that means. Everybody keeps talking all the talk about, oh yeah, we need to get a running game, we need to shore everything up. I think one of these guys goes to the Chargers. I know Roman's been talking about that, how they need to shore up their running game. And he knows what to do with the running back. So I don't know.
Well, when you got Jim Harbaugh at your head coach and you've got the players that he's got already, he's got a great quarterback. He doesn't have to worry about that. But what always helps a great quarterback? A running game, to your point. And I'm with you, Mikey. I think that why some of those guys maybe aren't getting the tag is only because when you look at the running back position today, and I don't agree with this decision, but these guys are considered old at 28. I'm not sure 28's really, I know that's older for a running back, 4 or 5 years in the league and everything else or whatever it is, 6 years.
Yeah.
But, some of them have been beat up and some haven't. And yet they throw them all in the same pool together. I don't know why they do that. By the way, the landing spots that I was looking at for both these two quarterbacks are kind of the same. Both of them are looked at by Pittsburgh, Atlanta. I think what these teams want, Mikey, is they want some sort of a veteran who can maybe be there while they get somebody else for the future, and which it makes sense. It's just a matter of how much do you got to pay that vet, because are you on a team that's really destined for the playoffs and everything else? Pittsburgh, maybe. Seattle's where I keep thinking that Kirk Cousins should go because they were 9-8 last year. They're basically a team with a winning record that could potentially be a playoff team pretty quickly, and maybe Kirk is the guy. I don't know, but could be interesting.
How about the Raiders? Where the Raiders? Who's going to go there?
Funny you say that. That's another landing spot for Kirk Cousins. I'm not kidding, and I'm not just making that up. That's talking to my buddies and everybody who's in the NFL, a lot of GMs, some of the guys that I know that are owners and stuff. I like to pick their brain when I'm around them, and I'm like, all right, so tell me the dirty.
That would be a good move, I think.
Yeah, that would be. All right, how about the Detroit Lions, Mikey? I'm looking at them, and I wanted us to talk about it because you and I talk football all the time, and it's always fun, and we're talking about the Niners and everybody else, obviously, across the league. But Detroit was a heck of a team, and everybody kind of figured they might be on the verge, and they were. Right, they're really good record. They beat Kansas City during the first game of the year, I think.
Almost beat the 49ers in the playoffs.
Yeah. They were better, I think, than maybe even advertised. So the question is, what do they need? Like I look at them, Mikey. What puts them over the top? And I'll give you my quick assessment, which is they got it at running back. I'm okay with the quarterback position, but what they lack is a defensive they've got a good defense in terms of the run defense. That's not a problem. Pass defense is different. So they either need a corner or they need another edge rusher, because outside of Hutchinson, he's lived up to everything from Michigan where he came from. But I'll tell you what, my shot would be this. Just get one guy. Get Danielle Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings. He's hungry. He's mad at the Vikings. He'll get 2 shots against them. And you'll have 2 defensive ends or edge rushers, whatever you want to call them these days, that both are somewhere between 14 and 17 sacks coming off the edges. I think that makes them not just a playoff team, maybe even a Super Bowl team. They're number 5 right now in Vegas, number 5.
Wow, I didn't know that. Oh, geez. Well, I think it's deserved, and I think what you're saying about the secondary is the same thing that I've been harping on you about for the Niners forever. That's their weakness. It still is. It showed again. And then all it took was one key player, the Hufanga, the safety, being out, and that's it. And the whole backfield collapses back there. So
Yeah.
I think it's really underrated. I think I get you on the rush, but also I just feel like they need help in the secondary as
Yeah.
much more.
And you know what? Through either free agency or the draft, I think that they can get a corner that can actually be really good for them. And all of a sudden that shores them up to some degree anyway. And they're not going to be able to hold the ball back there as long as they have. If you've got two outside rushers coming at them, which your 49ers had, but the rest of the secondary just wasn't the same. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, Mikey, thanks so much for making the time and taking the time to be with us today on the Rebels Edge. It's always a fun one. And tomorrow, I think John will be back, but if he's not, you're going to be seeing this guy with me again. I'm looking forward to it either way.
Yeah, you know where to find me, my friend.
All right. See you tomorrow, 1 p.m.
All right. Cheers.